Thank you, and good morning, Deputy Speaker. And good morning to my and good morning to my parliamentary colleagues from Tasmania. If I could address just one point very briefly before I turn my focus to the motion that we're discussing in this place today, and that is the issue of a price on carbon. I would ask the government to be mindful that the repeal of a price on carbon will mean that we will lose the $70 million windfall that Hydro Tasmania will enjoy this financial year and in successive years. So I don't want to get into a slanging match, argy-bargy, about the price on carbon. What I would ask the government, though, is to be mindful of that cost to Tasmania of overturning the price on carbon, and I think it would be entirely appropriate in the circumstances if the government would consider somehow compensating Tasmania for the loss of that $70 million benefit that is being enjoyed by Hydro this financial year. Deputy Speaker, Tasmania is obviously a place of enormous unrealised potential. It is a wonderful place. It's the place I chose to move there, in fairly recent years, and I'm very pleased with that decision. It is the jewel in this nation's crown in so many ways. But, Deputy Speaker, Tasmania will not realise its potential until at least three things are done. For a start, there needs to be a collegiate, multilateral political approach to remedying the problems that the state and the challenges that the state has. I'm pleased that the debate today has started in a very gentlemanly, collegiate way, and I would hope that that continues. I was disappointed to see when this debate started last week that there was too much mudslinging and political point scoring, and I think that is one of the reasons we find ourselves in Tasmania in the circumstances we do. I am certainly more than prepared to work in a collegiate manner, in a non-partisan way, with the members of all of the political parties to try and find consensus, to try and find ways to move the state forward. The future of my home state of Tasmania should be above party politics and the political self-interest. I know we've got a state election coming up in a few months' time, and there's political reasons for trying to score points at this point in time, but I would ask that we put them aside in the interest of the state. The second point I want to make, Deputy Speaker, is that Tasmania will not achieve its potential until governments, state and federal, put in place the enablers of economic development. It's no good, and politicians are guilty of this all the time, of jumping to stage 2 of the plan, that we will be a food bowl, we will increase the size of the university, we will increase niche manufacturing like high technology catamarans and INCAT. But that's actually the second stage of a plan. The first stage, Deputy Speaker, is to put in place the enablers of economic development. And there's a couple that come straight to my mind. For a start, we need a better quality of governance in Tasmania, and perhaps this is something the member for Bass who's just walked in would probably agree with me, that we do need a better quality of governance. Now, that's not me trying to score points, that's not me attacking any particular party or any particular government, but I think it has been, I know it has been the case in Tasmania that we have had a substandard level of governance quite a lot in recent decades. So I will look with great interest at the state election, and I hope we will see all of the political parties put up better quality candidates. Because it is not true that we get the politicians we vote for. We actually get the politicians the political parties let us vote for. So I'll be looking with a keen eye, and I'll be passing compliments when they're due and criticism when it's due, when if the political parties put up poor candidates or good candidates. We need strong political leadership. We also need to get the cost of Bass Strait down. It is an absurdity. It is an absolute absurdity that 3/4 of the cost of getting a 20-foot container from Hobart to North America, 3/4 of the cost is getting it from Hobart to the Port of Melbourne, and only 1/4 of the cost is getting it from Melbourne to North America. It's an absurdity that to get a container of raw materials, inputs for our business in Tasmania, it's an absurdity that 1/4 of the cost is getting that material from China to Burnie or Devonport, from China to Melbourne, and 3/4 of the cost of moving that container is getting it from Melbourne to Hobart or somewhere else in the state. I was very disappointed to see the Tasmanian state government not challenge the Victorian government on the $75 million annual port licence fee that it requires the Port of Melbourne Authority to pay the Victorian Government every year. Now, I am advised that that port licence fee imposed by the Victorian Government, which applies to everything coming in and out of Tasmania effectively, because it all goes through Victoria, is effectively unconstitutional. It's a tax on interstate trade. The Victorian Government is acting quite improperly. And I think the Tasmanian Government knows that, but is not prepared, doesn't have the strength to take on the Victorian Government in the courts. Because if we could get rid of that $75 million port licence fee imposed at the Port of Melbourne, that would bring down, or help bring down, the cost of freight in and out of Tasmania. There are then any number of specific policy reforms that could be implemented and implemented quickly to help Tasmania. I asked the government, to the two members of the government who are sitting in the Federation chamber today, please go back to the government and ask the government to reconsider the decision to axe 56 federal public service IT jobs in Tasmania and to send them to the mainland. I asked the government in a collegiate way to reconsider that, because 56 IT jobs in a workforce as small as Tasmania, it's a lot of jobs. And it would seem to be entirely at odds with this government's stated intention to help Tasmania out. To strip 56 federal public servant jobs out of the state, mostly out of Hobart, I suspect, is at odds with that stated policy position of the government. It could be reversed today. Today, the minister could stand up and say he has directed the parliament, or she has directed the parliament, not to go ahead with reposting those positions or acting those positions. Another thing the government could do today, we don't need inquiries, something we could do today. The government could stand up and say something about what's happened to Qantas. What's the relevance of Qantas to Tasmania? Well, among other things, I've got a call centre in Glenorchy City employing over 200 of my constituents. And they're nervous. I've had a lot of correspondence from the workforce out at Glenorchy saying they are very, very worried about the future of Qantas and the future of their jobs. So if the federal government wants to do something today, and the Prime Minister or the Treasurer could stand up today and do something decisive to put our minds at ease about the future of Qantas. And personally, I would favour the federal government taking a financial stake in the airline and giving the airline the financial muscle to compete with its competitors, all of whom enjoy largesse and a stake from their own governments, whether it be the Singapore government, in the Middle East, from New Zealand and elsewhere. And finally, Deputy Speaker, we need to do something about small business in Tasmania. We don't have a big mining industry, we don't have a big manufacturing industry, but we do have a very big and vibrant and important small business sector. Something like 32,000 small businesses in the state. I went out and I had a cup of tea on Saturday night with members of the Syrian community. There's about 300 in my electorate. And everyone who was there, and there were dozens, every one of them is a small business operator. Many of them have got corner stores, takeaways, and so on. And they were saying that they are being crushed by the cost of doing business in Tasmania. For example, a little corner store doesn't take away food as well as groceries, paying $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in electricity bills in a year. It's unaffordable. One businessman told me how he pays $600 a year for someone from, I assume it's Taswater, to come out and inspect his grease trap. $600 a year to have a look at a grease trap. Unaffordable for business. Excessive rates. They pay rates, but yet they don't even get the basic services that anyone else gets that pays rates. They don't even get their garbage removed. Excessive payroll tax, land tax, and of course the predatory behaviour of Woolies and Coles. That's something the federal government could do something about, but yet when in the 43rd Parliament, when the member for Kennedy and myself asked to do something about the predatory behaviour of Woolies and Coles, couldn't get any support. But frankly, these corner stores are being driven out of business. When Woolies and Coles are selling a litre of milk for $1 or a loaf of bread for $1, they can't compete with that. It's predatory behaviour and it's driving the small businesses, particularly in my electorate, out of business. Deputy Speaker, there is so much we could do in Tasmania at the state government level, the federal government level. We need to work collegiately and do what we can, and we need to do it really quickly. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.